What's the language on this?
G, hard G. If you say anything above shoot or shucks, we have to turn you off immediately.
Okay, I can find a way around that.
No, I am fucking kidding. What a fucking joke. No.
I was going to go full fucking ASL for you. That's the only way I was going to be able to not say fuck.
No, God, no. That'd be the worst interview ever if it was all just G. So no, say whatever you want. Say whatever you want.
Okay, it's a step forward.
Hello, everybody. This is another episode of the Then and Now podcast. We have a very, very great guest with us today. We have Mr. Chuck Pineau.
So, I know this too. I know it's actually pronounced like the wine. So it's Pineau. Now here's the thing. I haven't drunk much of that wine, so I could have still butchered it.
Pineau. So just imagine it's spelled Pino. Boom.
Pineau. Okay.
Oh yeah. The French are ridiculous. They just throw a bunch of fucking letters on the end of everything. It's ridiculous. There's literally a dozen different ways to spell my name.
Right on. So I guess you are French. Do you?
Yeah. Wait.
Oh, nice. Awesome. I have no idea what that means. I'm American. I can barely speak English.
Oh, it means yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We've already had great conversation before the pod, so I was like, let me get this intro rolling before we do some good content. Ethan, how you doing, brother? Yeah, I forgot to introduce my co-host with me today. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Brody. I'm doing good. You know that it's always good to see you. It's good to see Chuck. Chuck's a good man, good dude. And you're my policy when we have our guest on, they have to take center stage. We got to move him over to the main screen.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
Superstar.
Right. I'm feeling it. I'm getting the treatment.
Yeah, of course.
Man. For anyone that does not know, Mr. Chuck here is a amazing content creator. He writes his own comics. One I'm interested in. I keep telling him I want to look. I'm gonna check it out. Is Belial. I think it's already out, right?
Yep, issues 1 and 2. Hell, I'll send you a digital copy so you can check it out.
So I'm gonna buy it. I want to buy it because like even with Ethan, I have like 4 or 5 of his comics here myself, like hard copies I buy. I'm trying to get back into collecting, and I'm also going to collect creators that I admire, and I admire your content that you're doing. So I'm going to pick it up and pick up a hard copy.
Ooh, thank you, man. You know what though? I find like people think that I'm being ultra nice when I say I'm going to send you a digital copy. There's a little bit of cockiness in it, because what I like to do is I like to send them the digital, knowing full well I believe you're going to fucking like this. And then guess what? That's another backer on the next Kickstarter. So
right.
So yeah. I'm not worried. The money will come. You know, like I'll sell it eventually. I'm just not selling it right this second. Right. But we can make it happen.
The drug dealer's method, as it were.
Yo, that's it.
Here's a sample. Yeah. I feel you.
Get a taste.
Yeah, exactly.
20 Montana.
And before we started recording, Chuck asked if we had a language restriction or if this was meant to be anything. Clearly, that's not the case. We want you to know that up front. That is not the case. So yeah.
Exactly. I don't think we've ever really talked about that on the show before, about what kind of language we want to use. We just kind of either one episode we don't cuss at all, or the next episode is all explicit cuss words known to man.
Right.
I always have to ask because I know, people say, oh, Canadians are so polite. We are polite, but we love to fucking swear. We love a good curse word. And up there, it's not a swear word. It's not something bad. It's not even, we don't call it curse word. It's passion words.
Passion words.
I fucking love that. I fucking love that. That thing is awesome. You know what I mean?
So you call them passion words.
That's what I call them. Yeah, they're passion words.
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
I'm using that.
That's really cool. Yeah. You mentioned from Canada. You're from Ontario, right? Or you're in Ontario?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What's crazy about the States is that depending on what region you are in the States, like a cuss, some things may be considered a cuss word. Like you can say damn, like I feel like more in the West, the Midwest. But if you're in the South, damn is like, it's extreme. Like, boy, you saying damn in my house? Let alone if you say fuck, oh my God, the hell is frozen over.
So I'm a Canadian that lives in Texas. That was a fucking trip. Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. Yeah, that's a whole, that's like culture shock within culture shock.
It was huge, man. It was huge.
Like, you fucking heathen.
Yeah.
They're gonna cuss too.
And I have to watch my language a lot because they're huge on, like, even back home. It's like, I swear on my fucking kids. It's okay. You know what I mean? And you might feel a little bad, but you're still gonna let one slide now and then and not feel terrible. But here, some lady is gonna beat you with a fucking bag if you're caught saying something wrong. So I try to keep it down when I'm in the store.
Right on. I love it. And you mentioned your kids right there, and you're a family man too. So how is it? Charlie knows this. Other people who watch the show know this. I am a single dude that has no kids, no girlfriends that I know of, and I still struggle to find time to try and write. I'm curious how you manage to manage all of these things, the books you're working on for Antarctic Press and everything else, and have a family life.
So you have a funny way of saying that, because anybody else would be like, I have no kids that I know about, but you're like, I have no girlfriends that I know about. That's like a whole other level. I like that a lot. You know what? LA. For me, my kids are older. So really? It makes it a lot easier. Like, my youngest right now is 12. And I just kind of hit this point about 4 or 5 years ago where I was just like, you know what? The kids are all doing their own thing. And I've been a writer my whole life, just haven't published. But my wife and I started before we even had kids. So over 20 years ago, we met in an online role-playing game where all of it is done through writing. And so that was something that attracted us to one another right away. And I've always been huge into writing, and story is my world. Like, it really does mean so much to me. So much story is attached to so many of the other things that I love doing in my life. And so I just realized at some point I got to do this. And I basically kind of ended up falling into it and then just couldn't leave. And by that point, the kids were old enough that I could just move forward and roll with it.
Sure.
Man, your marriage is...
Go ahead. Sorry,
this marriage is a Hallmark movie, man. That's like a picture storybook movie. Jesus.
Yeah, that's the dream scenario. That's kind of to meet the you know, in the writing world, the meet cute, to have a meet cute done that way. And
yeah, right.
Cool.
Yeah, no, Wendy is wonderful. She, in fact, you know, like, we made our own role-playing world and whatnot, and that thing went on for over 10 years. And then, you know, now that I've jumped into the comic world, it's one of those things where it's like, do you want to come with? Yeah, I do. All right, cool. So she has edited Belial, and most of what she does is a lot of proofing and all that kind of stuff, making sure the I's are dotted and all that kind of stuff. But now she's writing her own stuff. She has her own books happening and stuff. She's got some short stories going on, and she's been published now and stuff too. So we're getting out there trying to make things happen together. I just, you know, she's the one that has the day job, and I'm the one that I make my living as an editor. So I just get out there, and then I'll blaze the path, and she can come on along for the ride.
No, that's fantastic. That's my editor for years was my best friend, Susan. I don't know what it is. Can you tell me what it is, Chuck, about women that are making them such good editors? Like, are they just that much more? Do they just have that much better vision that can see our mistakes, or what it is?
I think there's something about I think there's a level of caring that women have that a lot of men don't necessarily. Yeah. And so I think a lot of times for men, it's, you know, also the other side of it is we do end up being a little harsh. So yeah, a guy might get an editing job, but especially as a freelancer, if you're a dick, they're not hiring you back.
Right.
So, you know, with women, I find that because they're a little more maternal, because they care more and all that kind of stuff, they probably tend to be able to get the jobs over and over and over again, repeatedly, because they've got that bedside manner.
I love it. We're gonna isolate that block of right there of content and put that, post that somewhere as far as your words of wisdom from Pineau himself, because that's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, I'm clipping that for sure. Well, man, Chuck, let's take it back before the kids, before the wife, before the immaculate beard you have, my friend. Let's go back to childhood. What was it that led you to love the things that you enjoy doing now, make you want to be a comic writer in general, or when were you introduced to the craft?
I know the first time I picked up a comic, and I know all that kind of stuff. But as far as like just story in general, because I've written novels, I've written a novel. We're working on the next one. Have an audio drama. Like I'm not really. I love the medium of comics, and I'll probably keep coming back. But I'm certainly going to stretch out and try other things and play in other sandboxes and stuff. So it's really about story, and I don't know what it is. There's something about the mechanics of story, and also seeing how it works differently in different places. Like I grew up on sitcoms. And I loved sitcoms, and I loved watching the mechanics of comics, of comedy, and kind of how that worked, the cadences, all that sort of stuff. The stories were much more kind of broken down, and there was the obvious tropes. And then you go and you read like a fantasy novel, and it's completely different, and it's much more technical, and you need to understand. And I just remember really falling in love with that kind of stuff right away, and really loving the idea of. I think it's all about capturing an audience. Seeing someone's reaction and getting the reaction and understanding that in a way, as storytellers, we're emotional manipulators because we're trying to extract the utmost emotion from you by pacing and setting things up in a certain way. That's why we have the cliffhanger. That's why jokes are told in a certain way. That's why we have characters who are killed off. You know what I mean? All of those moments are set up to extract emotion. And so I feel like it's like that direct connection with other people that I just love. And so I think that's why I kind of fell into storytelling and really appreciated it.
Nice. Okay. Right on.
Is there a particular, so for me personally, I feel like everybody that's a comic fan has like a particular run, whether it's a character or a comic. For me, it's the Planet Hulk / World War Hulk saga. Do you have a certain run in comics that really touched you or like made an influence on the way you just create your own content growing up?
It's funny. You've got the top 10 list in your head. And I'm reeling through it, but the same one keeps just jumping back up. So it's got to be the Chris Claremont years of X-Men. Just love his stuff back then so much. And I think it was all about the web and kind of, I like to call it the web anyways. And that's like how he would weave different storylines into each other. It's so funny because nowadays we see these hard arcs. And it's like this arc happened, and now we're going to move on, and it's that arc. Right. But you often it's almost harder to tell where one arc ends and another one begins when you look at the Claremont years, because he was always spinning stuff out, way ahead of time. And he had stuff so that you knew you could come back to it. And he was bringing these characters in that you knew that he was going to play with later on and stuff. And I love that feel. That's something that we've been able to do with Essence House, the audio drama and novel, is be able to throw stuff out there and know that we're going to come back to it and play with it later. So that's the kind of stuff that I absolutely just love.
Absolutely. And that's what's funny about that, is how what you're describing, Chuck, is what they call the Levitts Paradigm. But what Claremont was kind of famous for doing was essentially, as opposed to Levitts Paradigm, like usually, for those who don't know, a Levitts Paradigm is where you have your A story, your B story, your C story, your D story. And typically, once the A story has run out in that issue or that couple issues, then the B story will move up and that'll become the A story, and then so forth and so on. What Claremont would do is he would actually have the D story in one arc. So one arc would be considered the A story, but the sprinklings or the breadcrumbs from that A story, then in the next arc, that would be that B story would now be the A story. So essentially, all the building blocks were still there. Nothing was inconsequential in Claremont's run, which is why it was people always cite that as kind of like the biggest, most important run for X-Men. So, yeah.
Well, and that's the funny thing, is that that was always my issue with things like sitcoms, is that the continuity and stuff didn't seem to matter and stuff. Right. And so it was easy to kind of push that aside and go, cool, that's not something that you guys respect or are worried about. Fine. But it's stuff that matters to me. So when I write and when I read, that stuff does matter. And, you know, I'll look at things and I'll go, why the hell didn't this come up? Why wasn't this mentioned? And that's the kind of stuff that I notice either being done or not being done when I'm reading a certain run.
I guess, would you admit that it does require a higher level of skill to do something like that, to be mindful of what you are saying, because there are there are actual consequences. You can't just have something and then have it hit the reset button half an hour later from a sitcom. What you establish matters. It becomes canon.
I think it does, but you know what? I don't even know necessarily that it's also about technicality. Of course, that's part of it, but I think the other part is just giving a shit. Like, just, it needs to matter to you. And I know for a lot of people, it doesn't necessarily. And so they're going to go, okay, cool, this thing happened, and now we're moving on to the next thing. And it's like, okay, that sucks, but there's so much more that could have come out of that. And so to me, that stuff matters. I remember one of the earliest influences for me where that was concerned was learning and reading Shakespeare. And so the funny thing was at the end of Shakespeare, things like Hamlet and whatnot, they had to tell you who was going to succeed next in the crown at the very end of the book and whatnot, because to that audience, that was one of the most important things. Who was going to be the next king? Where was that going to go? Because if not, then everything was left in tatters, and to them, you'd be like, no, that's the story. So I really appreciated that and went, yeah, see, that's the fallout is so important. What happens with that? And that's what leads on to, you know, making trilogies and continuing on and, you know, making the D story into the C story and so on and so forth.
Right.
Exactly. Fast forwarding and forward past adolescence, and now at this point where you're starting to create content now, you obviously spend a lot of your time. You love going to cons, obviously, and promoting your own content. Obviously, what was that experience like when you went to your first con and somebody was a fan of your work, or somebody has? What is that like?
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's huge. It's so funny because I went to my first con in 2018, and it was literally a month after my first book landed in my arms. So I didn't necessarily have fans. It was more about creating them and making them. And then, you know, 2019, you go out there and there's a couple people who know your name, but not so much. And then 2020 happened and nothing happened. And then this year has been like a complete 180 for me. Like, it's been completely different because now I have people coming to my table going, no, I read this, I saw that. Or I have a lot of creators who will come to my table and go, Chuck, holy shit, I know you, man, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Who the hell are you? Sorry, like, what's going on? And it's a pretty amazing feeling. And I work really, really hard to not get used to it, because that's where you get jaded and that's where you get cocky and that's where that stuff, you know, I want that stuff to always be huge. I want it to always kind of matter because it's just such a great feeling. Who would want to, you know, not continue to feel this way?
Absolutely. I'm surprised to hear that your first convention that you went to was in 2018. That's something. And you were virtually, by that point you already were a writer and creator. You said you hadn't had your stuff that wasn't big or anything like that, but you already were one. So that's a very different approach. That's so cool though. I like that. Yeah. Well,
so in 2015-16, I moved into my new house in 2015. The cable guy came to the house and he saw our X-Men art and stuff all over the wall. We had like some Greg Horn pieces, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, oh, you love comics? And I'm like, yeah, I absolutely do. Huge X-Men fan. And so he starts talking and pitching me his book that he wants to create. And so I'm like, okay, sweet. So I was interested and I told him I was a writer myself. And so he said, why don't we get together sometime and talk about it? And from there, we started making the book, and it turned into, to me, I was going to help him out. I actually wrote the damn book. And that was in 2016, wrote the book. We tried to kickstart it, and it failed the first time, and then we did it the second time. And it worked. But during that time, there was Hurricane Harvey. There was all this other stuff that was happening in the poor guy's life, and it never happened. That book never came out, despite it getting as far as it did. It was all written. We'd already started working on the follow-ups. A lot of them now at this point, most of the art's done. So they're still kind of slowly tooling away at that. But when we did that first Kickstarter and it failed, I realized I understand why this fails. No one fucking knows who I am. Like, I don't matter in this industry. How is anyone just going to jump in? So I was like, what am I going to do to get my name out there? Writers are a dime a dozen. Let's be honest. Now, I mean, good writers are so hard to find. But just a writer, anyone who's willing to say I'm a writer, dime a dozen, so easy to find.
But also in the industry of comics, a visual medium, just being a writer, who cares? You have to have good art to go with.
Yep. So what am I going to do? So I saw a guy put up a thing saying, I need an editor. I don't have any money right now, but if someone's willing to come in and do that. And I thought, I'll have a credit. I'll have my name on a book. I'll be able to do that. And so I went there, I took care of him. And he had said in the ad, it's pro bono, you're just doing this for a credit. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm here for. I have no problem doing it for no money. I don't care. So I did that. And it went well enough that he ended up, from that point forward, I was on everything that he did. And so I then started pushing my name as an editor, and I was getting all these jobs, and I was, learning stuff. I started taking courses, and the funny thing was, at that time, I didn't know any other editors. Like, editors don't talk about themselves and what they do. So there was just this one chubby Canadian going, editors are important. What the fuck you doing? And nobody else is, I'm not really hearing anything else at the time. And so I was getting a lot of work. It was going really well. And then finally I was able to bring my books out. And so when I go to shows now, I'm known more as an editor than I am as a writer, even though writing is shit for me. It's what's so important, but I do put so much more of my time into editing. And it actually, at this point, to be fair, keeps me from writing because I'm so busy. I have so much stuff going on.
And I know you have some questions, Charlie. I'm gonna let you go right after this, but I am guessing all the time you spent editing helped you hone your craft as a writer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten to work with some really talented people, but also working with people who have a lot of issues and who are having problems. One of the things I've learned in life is that we learn more from our failures than from our triumphs. And so seeing some of those failures and seeing some of those things that didn't work, the moments where people say something like, I didn't like it because of that, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. So being able to be a part of so many different projects has helped me to really kind of hone things down and see where the gears work and really kind of put that into my own work.
Excellent.
That's great. I guess we'll get more into your writing. I guess this is a question for you and Ethan, since you guys are both writers. Do you have a preferred writing tone? Do you pretend to want to write darker stories? Do you tend to look for lighter, or not as hard? What's the word I'm looking for? I'm stumbling up my words now. Lighter tone stories, you know what I mean? What do you have a preference in your writing style when you tend to write? Or do you try to keep it versatile?
I've talked my ass off. Ethan, why don't you go first? I'm interested to hear what you say.
Well, the thing is, though, you're the guest. You're the special guest star. I shouldn't be saying anything. My camera should be off entirely. What I will say, obviously, is from what I've seen about Chuck's work in the range, it does have a range, Charlie. It does seem like he doesn't mind. I mean to step on your toes, just be out of turn.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like you have a problem tackling different genres, tackling different demographics, tackling different age ranges or ratings, that kind of stuff. If it needs to go dark, you'll go dark. If it needs to stay more lighthearted, go lighthearted. We've listened to you right now. Clearly, you have a sense of humor. You can tell some jokes. Yeah. But also, I think people who tend to be the funniest, they know some darkness. So I imagine you and I probably share some of these things. If I'm wrong, let me know.
No. You're dead on. I also love the challenge. You were mentioning Antarctic Press earlier, and one of my favorite stories to tell is one of my buddies, Zach Gray, gets in touch with me, and he says, "Hey, AP wants me to do a piece for them, and I want you to write it." I was like, "Yeah, I'm down. What are we gonna do?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. We can do whatever." And I said, "You're tight with them. Why don't you contact them, find out what they want? Whatever they want, we'll do." And he's like, "Oh, you're okay with that?" And I'm like, yeah, I like the challenge, because I didn't have anything sitting there, and I didn't want my first piece to them to be something that was necessarily too personal, because then if it's shot down, that hurts. Yeah. So I'd rather it was just something that was kind of inspired, and I knew that, hey, whatever you guys throw at me, I would love to be able to just jump on it, tackle it, and send it back to you, and hopefully you like it. And if you didn't, I wasn't ready for the challenge, and I got to work on that. And
doesn't it feel great though that all the whole 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell style, all the training you put in as an editor, all the years you spent writing before you were a pro or published, all that pays off. It's like any hurlball they throw at you. Can you do a heist movie? Can you do a noir story? Can you do a horror? Like you have literal credibility in all those genres. I mean, that'd be affirming.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. What was neat about that one was he gets back to me. This is lunch at 6:30, or sorry, it was dinner 6:30 at night on a Thursday, and a little bit. Sorry, my kid wanted something. So he comes back to me around dinner time, and he says, they want us to do like a 5-page story for their sci-fi book, their anthology. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, not a problem at all. And so I said, he goes, but there's a thing. I was like, all right, cool. What's that? He goes, it needs to be done by Monday. I said, oh, okay. And he goes, can you do that? And I was like, well, wait, like they need the script by Monday? And he's like, no, the whole thing, all 5 pages needs to be done by Monday. Yeah. Can you do that? And I'm like, I'm going to stay up all night tonight until the script is done and I'm happy. But can you do it? And he's like, yeah, if you can get me that script tonight, no problem. I was like, okay, cool. I'll think about something and I'll send you an idea. So I did. I sent him an idea and he's like, that sounds kind of cool. Go for it. And I stayed up literally until 3:14 in the morning, hammering that piece out, get it perfect. But the crazy thing about that one was he says to me, I said to him, I said, okay, so I said, obviously we don't have any time for color, right? And he goes, yeah. He said, we don't have the budget for colorists either. I was like, okay, no problem. That's fine. I said, what about lettering? And he said, yeah, I can't letter. I could hand letter. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. That just looks ugly. I was like, so we don't have a letterer? And he's like, no, I could try to figure something out. I was like, screw it. We'll just do a silent piece. And he's like,
so you deliberately wrote. Yep.
Yeah. And he was like, can you do that? And I'm like, we're about to find out, I guess. And so I wrote this like head trippy ass silent piece, very kind of, I don't even, it's just the old 70s kind of sci-fi stuff. Just, something that's really going to throw people out there, but filled with the action and whatnot. Did 5 pages, sent it in. They loved it, and it made it into Planet Comics too. So that was pretty sweet.
I love that. I love everything about that. One thing I love, I'm not sure if you heard of Squid Game, Chuck, the series.
Everybody's talking about that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Charlie and I've talked about it. Have you seen it yet, Chuck?
I'm one of those guys who I don't want, first off, social media I find is so toxic, where a lot of this stuff is like anything that you love, some asshole is going to come by and tell you why it's a piece of shit. Yeah. And so I usually, when things are huge, I don't jump on them. I wait until it's died down, then I jump on it.
Right.
So Squid Game sounds like something I'm gonna be really interested in stuff. My kid's into it, and I'm like, all right, cool, but I'm gonna wait a little bit.
No, so, fair enough. The reason I brought that up is because the idea of Squid Game, it kind of reminds me of like, this is Squid Game for writers. Is that you have to go into this game, this game of life or death. Here are the challenges you have, and here are the challenges within those challenges, and here are your adversities, and here's your blindfold. Good luck. Go have fun. It's like, what? So it's I like that. you had all those things against you, and yet you still rose to the challenge. And that's got to feel even more rewarding in the end.
Yeah, and you know what made it even better was I sent it out to them and then didn't hear anything.
Mhm.
You know, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna make it in," blah blah blah. And at that time, it's like, yeah, because Zach's their boy and it's gonna get in there. It's got nothing to do with the, you know, like it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the writing. And I haven't heard anything. And of course, you know, they can't see the work that I did. It's because it's all art.
Right.
So then I got this. I suddenly, like, months go by, and you know, already on to the next bunch of projects and doing whatever. And I get a tweet from someone I don't know. I'm not following them. They're not following me. And it's a review of that story.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, what? It had come out the previous week, and we hadn't been told. And so we didn't even know it was in previews. Like, we didn't know anything. And he just had so much great stuff to say about it. And he was like, these guys are great. They make an amazing team. I would love to see more of this stuff. We don't see enough silent work. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. All right. Like, it was really badass. And it was so yeah, I think if I had known it was coming and it just come out, and there probably would have been this kind of crash of no one saying anything right away, because it's an anthology. Who's picking up anthologies, you know? Yeah. And so not knowing that it came out, and then the first thing I hear is this amazing thing from a reviewer that it turns out I really respect where they come from, especially since they like me. How the fuck would I not respect that?
Right. I mean, on Twitter too. On Twitter, that's a prime for toxic. Right. Yeah. So to get a positive thing on Twitter, good God.
And I wasn't as much of a Twitter guy back then. My stopping grounds have mostly been Facebook. So to get something from Twitter made no sense to me. So yeah, it was really cool.
Right on.
So obviously, everyone is a fan of fan fiction, right? My question is this: the whole thing about fan fiction is that you get to take your favorite characters and put them in your favorite optimal situations. Now, Chuck, you being a fan of comics, do you have, let's say you could pick any IP that you wanted to, and you get a run with that IP, what IP would you choose?
So here's the funny thing. I'm not actually a huge fan fiction guy necessarily. I love, you know, I love the big two, and I love so many of these different IPs out there, but I don't necessarily write fan fiction, because anything I write, I want it to go out there and be usable and do something. Right. So I don't tend to do that. I did a one page for someone. They wanted to do something cool, and so I was basically brought on to do a Deadpool Batman one page, and that was really fun. And we just screwed around, and the artist was spectacular, and so it came out really cool. But I never necessarily. But I do have pitches set up for certain characters, and so for me, I'm a short, hairy Canadian. I love Wolverine.
Yeah,
right. But at this point, hasn't he kind of done it all? And so, as a diehard guy who loves his stuff, what I would like to do is I would like to write. Wolverine has, I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but he has a foster daughter named Amiko. Yeah. And she was being taken care of by Yukio the Ronin, who is also best friends with Storm and whatnot. So I wanted to do a like Batman and Robin style book where it was the two of these women in Japan working together as crime fighters in like the streets, you know, against like Yakuza and all sorts of stuff, and you know, even some super powered badasses and whatnot. I just thought that would be an awful lot of fun, and that would be my way of being able to do new stuff with Wolverine, because no one's using those characters really.
No, that's great. I love that. I saw once, it was I guess it was kind of a fan art image. No, it was a real image, but it had like kind of the daughters of Wolverine essentially. It had like Weapon X and X-23, and it had her and his foster daughter. It had Jubilee was in there. You know, some other ones too. All the ones he
Kitty,
kind of like, Kitty died in the end of the movie. He had a Rogue, but that's not the comic books. But there's so many people. He's kind of like he has a tendency to be a father figure to so many young women.
Great, Chuck. And let's get into closing, starting to wrap stuff up. As you being a veteran in the game now, what is some advice you would give to up and coming writers or aspiring writers as far as how to perfect their craft, maybe how to get their name out there in the business?
You know what? Not enough. Not enough people talk about what they do. They want to make something cool, and they work so hard. And do work hard on what you do and try to do a really good job. But at the end of the day, the two things that you have to do in the comics game, one, and probably the most important, is fucking finish it. Whatever it is, it needs to end. You need to finish that 24-page book. You need to finish that 120-page OGN. Like, whatever it is, get it done. Because no one can see what you did. And fuck the perfection. Fuck, all that kind of stuff. You'll learn. You'll do better on the next one. That's why people will often tell you in this business, do small stories first. Because that's where you're going to fuck up. That's where you're going to make your failures. And it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, learn from that stuff, and then you can move on to the bigger stuff, and you're maybe ready for it. The other thing is, talk about it. Like, I mean, I don't think I'm the best editor out there, and I'm always learning stuff and trying to be better and trying to learn new things. Like, I've taken lettering courses and art courses just so that I can be of more use when I actually take on someone's book and help them out and to spot everything. But what I am is probably one of the loudest editors, and I'm the guy who's out there, cheer on your team. When they're doing a Kickstarter, talk about it. When it's in previews, talk about it. Now, are you first off, you're mentioning your name, yeah, but you're also getting everyone else on the team out there. You're showing off their names and stuff too, and that stuff matters. Marketing for indies is so difficult, and it's such a slog. But if the whole team, yeah, right. But if the whole team is pushing, it's a lot easier. And so, I think one of the reasons why people pick me up is just because they know Chuck is going to talk about it, and his name is actually going to mean something on there because he talks about it and he shows it off. And if everyone did that, you'd make it a lot harder for me to get jobs, but you'd make it a lot easier for you. So go out there, preach about the stuff you're working on. If it doesn't matter, start trying to work on things that matter to you. You know what I mean? Like, try to find people that you really want to work with, that you're excited to work with. If you have to, offer them a discount or whatever. You know what I mean? Say, man, I love your work. I really want to work with you. And I'd be willing to take a little bit of a hit to make that happen. Do what you got to do, but get out there, finish it, and preach.
Right on. I love it. But before we go, Chuck, we do have to play. There is something on this show that you call. Do you have it queued up there, Charlie?
I'm ready to go. Let's go
ahead.
Okay.
Something we can play on the show called Either Or. All right, Chuck. This here is a bit of a hypothetical game called Either Or. This is where I give our guest or anyone on the show a couple of prompts, and they have to choose between the two of them, and they have to show their work as to why they have chosen made the choice they made. So in your case, we are going to have it that, since you are a diehard fan of X-Men as well as a diehard fan of tabletop role-playing games, we are going to say that you have the abilities, the strict parameters, defined abilities of one of the X-Men. So choose an X-Men of your choice. It can be Wolverine, it can be Cyclops, whoever you're going to be. Go ahead and choose a Wolverine. Choose a mutant right now in the X-Men.
Right. It probably is going to be Wolverine, but not even because he's my favorite, but just because there's so many things in my life that I'm scared of. I am
virtual immortality is nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely afraid of heights, but I know if I could land, I could fall off of a building, land, break my neck, get back up, and start moving again. That fear starts to disappear, and living a life that's a lot less fearful sounds like a lot of fun. So I think I would do that, and also we have those existential mores and depressions where it's like, we're all gonna die one day, all that kind of shit. Not me. No. So yeah,
I mean, eventually, maybe. But
by that point, I'll want to die. So
yeah.
I'm ready.
Some very voracious STD or something. It's like, okay, I had it coming.
Yeah.
So we're gonna say that you have that you're Wolverine or have the powers the powers of Wolverine. And I'm guessing it was a D&D or whatever tabletop game you played that with your wife. In that game, you had a character that you built, a favorite character that you built. So go ahead and choose that character and that class. Were they a paladin? Were they thief? What were they?
It was an assassin. I was always a rogue guy, and so my character in our world was an assassin. I loved that. I loved the headspace of it.
Perfect. So we're gonna say here for this either you have to be Wolverine or have the powers of Wolverine put into the D&D or a tabletop world and try to survive, do your thing, live as that character would, or you are that rogue on the team of the X-Men. Let's say in Claremont's run of X-Men, either or, which would you rather be?
So I'm either a rogue in the X-Men,
Claremont's
or
run.
I'm like a Wolverine-style assassin in the D&D world.
In one of the campaigns you played back in the day.
Yeah. I think I do the Wolverine-style D&D character, even though I love X-Men and would love to live in that world. Let's be honest. I don't think I could match up to the rest of what they're doing in their powers. Whereas, with those powers in a D&D world, I'm doing dandy. There's no problems. So I think I do a lot better in that version.
That's here's the thing. I know you don't do fan fiction, but that's kind of an awesome fan fiction is Wolverine in a D&D story. Yeah, I'd watch that. I'd write that. So yeah.
Right? And I'm a massive dragon guy, so that would mean I'd actually be able to tussle and take a dragon, and that'd be pretty great. Ride one, whatever.
In the first few pages, Wolverine has to battle a dragon and then make that dragon his pet, and then he has to ride that dragon, call upon it. That has to be
badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
So badass.
Some dope shit right there.
So before we go, this is for both Charlie and for Chuck, Charles and Charles.
Right.
What would you name Wolverine's dragon?
Claw.
Charlie wins. My answer can't even be cool.
Yeah,
that's so good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chuck. You lost this round.
No, that's nicely done. I'm happy to lose this round, man. That was too good. You always want to win. You always want to lose to the best.
Yes.
And there was no better answer. So we
have to end on that. Anything else is insulting. Chuck, we can't thank you enough for coming on to the show, man. You were a delight and a half. We had high expectations for you, and you somehow insulted those expectations and blew them out of the water.
Exactly. Chuck, before you take off, is there any upcoming projects or current projects you want to plug before you take off?
Wow, yeah. See, I'm on Kickstarter all the time because of works that I've done. So right now, if you guys want, there are a bunch of things happening. Depowered is a book that I've worked on. It's struggling a little bit, and I would love for you guys to go check it out. It's by Part-Time Comics, and it's a world where 20 years ago, suddenly people got superpowers. Not everyone, but a choice number of people. And then 10 years ago, everyone lost them again. And so now these poor has-beens are kind of running in the con circuit, and their lives have kind of gone to crap. And so we're following this one guy, Dax, whose life has gone to shit, and he's just trying to find a way through it. And it only gets tougher. And it's just a really great book. I would really love for people to check that out. It's only got about a week left, and it could really use all the love it can get. Another one.
We can try to get that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then another one is The Savage SASQUANAUT, which is an absolutely amazing book. I was lucky to be a part of by a dude named Wes Hartman from Cosmic Roots Comics. And it's quite literally one of the funnest books I've ever read. I mean, it has to be. It's the Yeti in space. Oh. And I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. It's the greatest book ever. Right? I mean, look, you don't have to do anything else. It's such an easy thing, and it's so hilarious. They've had some of the best scenes ever. There's stuff I've seen in that book where I'm like, fuck, he did that first. Man, that's good. I'm bothered that he got to some of that stuff before I'd even thought of it. And so that's just such a fun book. They're about to fund in only I think we're 5 days in. And I would love to see that thing just do ridiculous numbers.
Gotcha. For the church announcements, everybody, before we close out, while Ethan's knocking that out, We do for our upcoming projects. We are working on a video essay history of Halloween that me and Ethan are planning on getting out sometime soon. Hopefully within the month of Halloween. If not, it'll be a little bit later than that. And then we have our own independent comic that me and my best friend from middle school are working on, which is I think properly named The Son of Shaitan now. I'll try to get some more information out about that. I think we should be done with that by late December, early January, and get that pushed out. And then lastly, just to be able to find my co-host here, you can find him at everything Echelon G Novels. Echelon G Novels, everything. This has been a great episode. Chuck, thank you again for coming on. I really do appreciate you coming on. You've been a great guest. And just like I said, this has probably been the most fun interview I've ever had. Conversation flowed, so I really appreciate that.
Thank
no
you,
offense
man.
to anybody else.
I love doing it. What's that?
No offense to anyone else on the show, but facts are facts.
Okay. It is, man. And for sure,
thanks, guys. I had a blast. I was really glad to be on board and to make this happen on this amazing Canadian Thanksgiving / Indigenous Peoples Day. So yeah, man, I'm glad to do it.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna talk to you later.
It's Indigenous People Day. That's right.
Yep.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna get with you later about getting that belial, getting that from me to read. You know, I'm gonna talk to you later about that. We'll talk about
that. Yeah. Yes, I got you.
So everyone, this has been another episode of the Then and Now podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.